Imagine going to a doctor because you can't breathe. He examines you, thinks for a moment, and tells you the problem may be that your womb has wandered too close to your lungs. For centuries, versions of that idea were real medicine. And it's not even the strangest thing humans believed about where babies come from. Rocks that could get you pregnant. Tiny, fully formed humans hiding inside sperm. Babies reshaped by a single frightening glance. And a mystery diagnosis that gave medicine a word we still use today. Because for most of history, everyone knew what caused a pregnancy, but what happened inside the womb after that? Nobody knew. So people invented their own answers. Some were superstition. Some came from the greatest minds of their time. To understand how anyone got there, we have to begin with the oldest question of all. What do you do when you desperately want a baby, but no one can explain why it hasn't happened?
The rock that could get you pregnant. For much of history, if you were struggling to have a child, one possible solution was to visit a rock. Not some special mineral, not a rock shaped like a god, not this rock, just the rock. Across different cultures, particular stones became associated with fertility. People touched them, rubbed against them, crawled through holes in them, slept near them, and in some local traditions, slid down them. Now, there wasn't some universal international committee deciding which rocks made babies. These traditions varied enormously, but the pattern appeared again and again almost all over the world. An unusual stone, a strange cave, a spring, a tree. Some place where the ordinary landscape seemed to be doing something, well, suspicious. And that place became connected to fertility. From a modern perspective, this looks like superstition. From the perspective of someone living 1,000 years ago, the alternative explanation was often, well, there wasn't any. Why did one couple have 6 children? Why did another have none? Why did one pregnancy continue while another suddenly ended? Why did a woman who had waited for years become pregnant immediately after visiting a shrine?
Today, we can talk about hormones, fertility windows, genetics, infections, and probability. Back then, probability was mostly just fate wearing a fake mustache. So if someone visited a stone and later had a baby, the stone had just became a 5-star honeymoon hotel. And here's the part we tend to misunderstand about old beliefs. People did not neatly divide their lives into science, religion, magic. Pick one. A person could consult a healer, say a prayer, carry a charm, visit a sacred place, and still try whatever practical advice their grandmother had been aggressively repeating for 7 years. Why risk missing the one thing that works? Some fertility traditions connected with stones survived into surprisingly recent folklore, which means that even as medicine changed, older rituals didn't simply vanish. They lingered. Because when the question is, will I ever have a child? People become very interested in backup plans. Still, a magical rock is at least predictable. It doesn't move. According to some ancient medical thinkers, the same could not be said for a mother's womb.
The organ that refused to stay put. Imagine visiting a doctor because you can't breathe properly. He listens carefully, he thinks, then he gives you the diagnosis. Your uterus may have wandered upward. Versions of this idea appeared in ancient Greek thought. The womb was sometimes described as mobile, restless, almost animal-like. In Plato's Timaeus, the uterus is described in language so strange that it sounds less like an organ and more like a pet that has become deeply dissatisfied with the household. The basic idea was that the womb could move from its proper position and cause trouble elsewhere. Move upward? Breathing problems. Press somewhere else? Different symptoms. Apparently, the human body was not an anatomical system. It was an apartment building with one extremely difficult tenant. Some treatments were influenced by the idea that smells could persuade the womb to move. Pleasant smells might attract it. Unpleasant smells might repel it away. The womb apparently was difficult to control. but not impossible to persuade. Come on, that's it. Follow the nice smell. Now, not every ancient doctor believed the womb literally wandered around the body. The 2nd century physician Serenus rejected this idea. Even in the ancient world, someone was apparently asking, can we please stop pretending the uterus has travel plans? Eventually, the wandering womb itself began to disappear from medicine. But the idea behind it didn't. That mysterious illnesses in women must somehow begin with the uterus. And that idea survived so long, we still use the word it gave us.
The disease that could mean almost anything. The word is hysteria. It comes from hystera, the Greek word for uterus. And for more than 2,000 years, versions of this diagnosis followed women through medical history. The symptoms? Almost anything medicine couldn't neatly explain. Difficulty breathing, fainting, anxiety, pain, paralysis, convulsions, emotional distress. The category became so broad that hysteria could act less like a diagnosis and more like medicine's miscellaneous drawer. Something is happening, the patient is suffering, we cannot find the cause, she's just hysteric. But the strange part is how the explanation kept changing while the label survived. In ancient medicine, the uterus could be blamed. Later physicians connected similar symptoms to different theories about the body. By the 19th century, doctors increasingly looked toward the nervous system. The womb stopped wandering. The diagnosis did not.
And by the late 1800s, hysteria had become one of the most famous and controversial diagnoses in European medicine. At the Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris, the neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot studied patients diagnosed with hysteria. His public lectures became famous. Doctors came to watch. And Charcot argued that his patients' traumatic symptoms were real, not simply women pretending. That was an important shift. But the demonstrations also became a spectacle. Patients were photographed, their attacks classified into stages. A private experience of illness became something an audience could observe. And among the young doctors who came to study with Charcot was Sigmund Freud. Freud would later help move the explanation again, away from a wandering organ, away from visible damage in the body, toward the mind. The theory had traveled from the womb to the nervous system to psychology, all while carrying a name that still meant uterus. Here's where the story refuses to stay in the past. Hysteria remained an official medical diagnosis well into the 20th century. The word is now largely abandoned in modern medicine, and the symptoms once thrown into that enormous category are understood in many different ways. But the history leaves behind an uncomfortable pattern. When medicine couldn't explain what a woman was experiencing, the mystery itself could become the diagnosis. And pregnancy created an even bigger mystery, because doctors weren't only trying to explain what a woman felt, they were trying to explain how something completely hidden inside her could be changed by the world outside. And for centuries, many people believed it could happen with a single glance.
The baby that could be changed by a single glance. For centuries, pregnant women were warned that simply seeing the wrong thing might physically alter her baby. Crave a particular fruit and never get it? The baby might supposedly be born with a mark shaped like the thing you wanted. See something horrifying, then instinctively touch your own face? The child's face could become ugly. And if a pregnant woman was badly frightened by an animal, the consequences could supposedly go much further. In the 19th century, Joseph Merrick, the man later known as the Elephant Man, believed his condition had begun before he was even born. The explanation he had been given was that his mother, while pregnant, had been knocked down and terrified by an elephant at a fair. This belief became known as maternal impression. The idea was that a powerful experience during pregnancy could leave a literal impression on the developing child. And once you accept that idea, pregnancy becomes a 9-month psychological minefield. Don't look at anything disturbing. Don't want anything too strongly. Don't become frightened. Don't have unusual thoughts. Basically, remain calm while everyone around you repeatedly explains the catastrophic consequences of not remaining calm.
The theory offered an explanation for things people could see but not understand. Birthmarks, physical differences, unexpected features.
A child was born with something unusual, so people searched backward. What happened during the pregnancy? What did the mother see? What did she eat? What frightened her? And eventually, someone would remember. Oh, there was that lightning storm one day? Mystery solved. The surprising part is how seriously versions of this idea were taken, not just in distant antiquity. The belief survived well into the early modern period, and it carried a darker consequence. Because we don't know why this happened is uncomfortable. Blaming the mother is easy. Maybe she looked at the wrong thing, wanted the wrong thing, felt the wrong emotion. An unexplained biological event became a moral investigation. And as we'll see in part 2, that idea could become far more than a strange medical theory. But there was still an even more basic problem. Even if the mother's thoughts didn't shape the baby, what did? Doctors had no idea how a human being actually formed. Then someone looked through a microscope, and things somehow became even weirder. The tiny man inside the sperm. The invention of the microscope was supposed to make the world less mysterious. Before it did, it made it a whole lot more controversial. In the 1600s, humans began seeing things no human had ever seen before. Drops of fluid were crowded with tiny life. Ordinary materials contained hidden structures. An invisible universe had apparently been sitting right under everyone's nose this entire time. I mean, not under the nose. I mean, you know what I mean. In the 1670s, sperm cells were observed. And lo and behold, there they were. Tiny, moving, obviously important, completely unexplained. Now, this is a dangerous combination, because whenever humans discover something new, there is a brief period where the correct answer is, we have no idea what this is. Humans are historically terrible at remaining in that period. Some thinkers supported versions of preformationism. The basic idea was that living things did not gradually form from simpler beginnings. The organism was already there, complete, just incredibly small. Then, in 1694, Nicholas Hartsocker published one of the strangest images in the history of biology. Inside the head of a sperm cell? A tiny human. Head, arms, legs, a complete microscopic passenger. The homunculus. Now, to be clear, Hartsocker had not actually looked through a microscope and seen a tiny man waving back. Good evening. The image represented a theory, but some spermists really did argue that the essential preformed organism came from the male contribution, with the female body providing the place where it grew. There was also a rival camp, the ovists. They placed the preformed organism in the egg. So one of the great scientific arguments of the age was essentially, where exactly are we storing the tiny people? And then comes the question that makes the whole thing collapse into madness. If a tiny person already exists inside a sperm, that tiny person will eventually produce sperm. So are those sperm already inside him? And do those sperm contain even tinier people? And do those people... Congratulations, you have invented human Russian dolls. Some preformationist ideas really did lead toward this bizarre nesting problem. Humanity packed inside humanity, generation after generation, waiting to unfold. The theory eventually lost ground as embryology improved, but there's something wonderfully humbling here. The microscope revealed reality. Then humans immediately used it to imagine tiny, invisible men. New technology does not automatically eliminate strange ideas. Sometimes it gives them better illustrations. And babies weren't only believed to carry mysteries before birth. Sometimes they arrived with something unusual still attached. Something so lucky, a sailor might want to buy it. That story is where part 2 begins. Along with royal births performed in front of a crowd, a woman who stayed pregnant for 28 years, and the moment when not understanding birth stopped being funny.